Some Missouri lawmakers say the state is not keeping its promises as the Education Department tries to clear a backlog of child care subsidy payments.
Now, because of that backlog, the state currently owes money to roughly 40% of child care providers in the state. Missouri Capitol Bureau Chief Joe McLean reports on the new call for legislative action.
The state's education department said this is all because of a new digital system they adopted back in December of 2023 to process the child care subsidy system. Over the past year, that system and technical issues with it has created this massive backlog.
Because this is so far backed up and the rates were not correct because the system is not working correctly, providers are just playing catch up.
Lisa Shear is the child care director of Beeden Christian Child Care Center in St. Louis. She said providers across the state are starting to receive payments after months of delays, but many are still waiting.
They've had to take out loans. They've had to lay off staff and be in classrooms.
In other cases, like with Bright Stars Learning Academy in Poplar Bluff, providers have had to completely close business for lack of vital subsidy revenue. Dr. Mary Crockett Smith is the owner of Christian Academy in St. Louis, who is also owed subsidy money by the state.
This, in 24 years, has been the most chaotic sense of urgency that I've witnessed as a child care provider and as a certified teacher in the state of Missouri.
House Minority Leader Crystal Quaid led Democrats in calling for a special interim committee to investigate the backlog of payments.
We've heard of folks having to quit their jobs, some parents not being able to go back to college this year when school started again, and it's a huge problem. And what it really boils down to is we have the money, but the governor's administration is not paying its bills on time.
The Education Department said it is aware of the systemic issues and has hired more staff to work on clearing the building stack of family applications, provider applications, and outstanding payments. Still, as payments are going out, the department said some are incomplete because of the ongoing technical issues. House Speaker Dean Plocker's office didn't respond to questions about whether he'll form an interim committee, but Quaid said the Republican leader agreed to hold a hearing on the issue during the upcoming veto session in 2 weeks. By that time, the department said it hopes to have most of the backlog cleared. In Jefferson City, Joe McLean, WGEM News.